Hated Rivalry Nation. How are we doing? How are we faring after episode 5? Because I don't know about you, but my ass is wrecked. It's one thing to have read those books over and over again, and so I knew what was coming, but it's another thing to have it adapted to screen. And God's, the directing, acting, sound design, the choice of music, every single bit of this episode just knocked it out of the park for me. And I was a sobbing mess at the end. Hopefully, for the non book readers who had tried to explain the importance of skip back when episode 3 dropped, which was interestingly enough when I first started making heated rivalry videos because I needed to get things off my chest with the way some of the fandoms were being so disrespectful to the OG himself, Scott Hunter. I do hope that for those of you who watched my video and then saw the episode, you finally get why I just kept waxing lyrical about his importance to his story, his own story, as well as Shane and Ilya's story as well, and a ton of the other characters that I hope we get to meet now that we are confirmed for season 2. But anyway, I have watched episode 5 3 times now. We'll start my fourth rewatch after this video goes live, but I figured that I should take a break to talk about the layers hidden and known in Ilya's phone call and confession to Shane, because as much as that call is a confession of how utterly, deeply in love with Shane Hollander, Ilya Rozanov is, it also speaks to the guilt he carries that is settled beneath his skin, that is as much a part of him as the love he feels for Shane. And as always, I would love to talk about it. But before I get into all of that, I would like to say a big thank you to everyone who's been watching my Hitter Rivalry videos. Thank you for the views, the shares, your comments, and insights have absolutely made my week. Your responses have made my day. And they also encourage me to do even more rewatches of the show so that I can make more videos. What can I say? I am deep into this. I will, however, like to say that I will be taking a break after today for the next 2 weeks just to rest my body and mind and enjoy the upcoming holidays. Although, with how pumped we all are for the season finale next week, we are going to the cottage, people. And so I will be back next Friday, only next Friday, with my video on on the finale, after which it's me back on my break until January 5th, at which point I honestly am torn between the commodification of Shane Hollander video, because those ads mean things, or the significance of Shane hiring a stylist video, because trust me, there's a symbolism to that that goes beyond him just getting a change of clothes. So yes, I am trying to decide which video to return with on the 5th. As such, please help me make my decision. Tell me which of these two videos you want to see first so that come January 5th, you will have something awesome to watch. I cannot decide on my own. I need your input and will be grateful if you share it. Thank you. And still on my thank yous, I'd like to say a big thank you to my lovely patrons and YouTube members whose support have been instrumental in helping me continue to make content, especially since I started doing this full time at the start of the year, which was the last time I was in paid employment. And a special, special shout out to Lina and Holly for their extra support. You get all the hearts and kisses to. Mwah. If you too would like to support me on Patreon or become a YouTube member to enjoy certain perks, even get a shout out, the link to do so is in the description bar. And with that said, Ilya's confession. Now, as someone who, like I said, I've read the books way too many times to count, I have been sitting on the edge of my seat waiting for this moment as Ilya's phone call and confession was a pivotal point in him personally arriving at the realization and sharing it with the readers on page that he's in love with Shane. I swooned the first time I read it, and I swooned even harder the first time I watched it on screen because, and this is where I'm going to get on my soapbox to state that you can legit see the level of admiration and love Jacob has for the source material that helped him further flesh out these scenes and characters. It says a lot that the confession occurs after Ilya's face off with Alexei, where his brother pours his frustration out on him, and Ilya effectively cuts him off after giving up his apartment and promising to set up a trust fund for his niece that she would only be able to access after she's come of age, because we know her father is a junkie. Now, his fight with Alexei has him feeling exhausted and frustrated and isolated. But there's also the guilt to it, which is why he reaches out to Shane, who, after the All Stars weekend at Tampa Bay that they had together, meant that their relationship has evolved to one where they aren't only showing their vulnerability with sex, but are now having full on conversations, honest conversations with each other that isn't merely pushed to the side for the sake of them, having sex like they used to. So he calls Shane, and in that moment of vulnerability where Shane provides him the space for him to say everything he wants to say, he unleashes. Now, as much as the lot of us were blown away by the confession in itself, the first thing that hit me in that scene was the fact that Shane Hollander, the beautiful man that he is, created the space where he and Ilya get to be alone uninterrupted. And then it tells him to offload his thoughts, everything he has to say. He should just let it out in Russian. The reasoning behind that is twofold. Shane knows that it would help Ilya say the truth he needs to unburden without the fear of being judged about what he's saying, because they both know that Shane wouldn't understand what Ilya is saying. And then there's the second bit of it. Russian is Ilya's first language. There's already the burden that is always carried where mentally he has to constantly translate his words in his head from Russian to English. And with that heft and weight of unsaid words and emotions he needs to process, Shane is very aware that removing the barrier of Ilya having to struggle to make those translations in his head means that that is one less weight off of his shoulders, and Ilya can just let himself go. Shane creates that space for him, and Ilya does. He takes it. I find it important to bring this up because, yes, like everyone else, I swooned at the confession, but I just want to state that I am an equal opportunity swooner. And so I also swooned at Shane letting his man just get it all off his chest without interrupting for a single second. He says not a word whilst Ilya pours everything out in a language he does not understand. Because in that moment, Shane Hollander is holding space for the man he loves, even though he's not brought himself quite to the point where he's willing to admit that. And I personally found that entire sequence beautiful. But back to Ilya. It is in the outpouring of his love that we then get to see the layers to the guilt that Ilya feels and carries, and how it is tied to his love for Shane. Whereby, like with a Matryoshka doll, also called Russian nesting dolls, we have his feelings for Shane as the constant in the middle, then the burning flame, it's the burning flame that stays alight, and then it is surrounded by all that guilt that spills outwards. Now we start with the outermost guilt, the one he has at the realization that Russia is not home to him anymore. Him telling Shane that he never wants to come back home again, that it's now become a place that he hates, is him admitting that home for him has changed. It's speaking to both his nuclear family, but also the country itself, because what he's realizing is that the estrangement that is to follow with his family means that without his connection to them anymore, then there's really no reason for Russia to be home to him again, no reason for him to ever come back, to ever want to come back. And that is something he feels as a betrayal to the country of his birth, when now he's looking at the mess of his family, the death of his father, his mother who died when he was a boy, and he's coming to the sinking realization that his motherland isn't a place he wants to ever return to. And somewhere in his subconscious, there's the realization that the only person he wants to return to, the only place he wants to be, the one home he now has, is with Shane. And that terrifies him and fills him with guilt in equal measure. Like I have said in previous videos, a lot of the game changer characters' stories do speak to the experience of queer folks in varying degrees. And in Ilya and the guilt he carries about home that isn't home to him anymore, I see reflected the experience of queer folks who've had to leave home behind in order to live free in another country far away where they get to be without the fear of being persecuted, for example. Remember, that is what Ilya reminds Shane of, that if he crosses that divide, he wouldn't be able to go back home to Russia, unwilling to admit to himself at that point that he had already crossed that divide and was in love with Shane already. But as I was saying, that guilt of leaving your home and family behind for the sake of you being free, of you being yourself, it does sometimes come with feelings of guilt for those you left behind, for the home that a voice whispers in your head you have now abandoned. Then Ilya takes us even further into the guilt he's battling at the realization that his father is gone. I think with Ilya, we sometimes forget that Grigory Rozanov might be one of the worst fathers alive in that world and an utter piece of shit. But Ilya had always craved his father's approval, an approval that was always predicated on Ilya winning, as much as Ilya might have resented the pressures his father put him under, it didn't mean that he didn't love his father. And now, said father is gone, buried next to Ilya's grandparents with a perfect tomb, because perfection is what Grigory had always demanded of his son, even though Ilya resented that constant pressure. And now he has to deal with that resentment, that guilt, the fact that ultimately in death, he has failed Grigory yet again, because now Ilya is battling with his desire to walk away and never turn back. And that would be failing his father and his family's legacy. But not just that. The argument he has with Alexei and what he admits to Shane confirm that in the last 5 months of his father's life, Ilya wasn't there. Yes, he was playing the game. Yes, he was sending money home, but it doesn't take away the fact that the care of his father in his final days was borne primarily by Alexei, and that is something that Ilya feels very guilty about. Now, I mentioned this in the video I made about the Netflix movie My Oxford Year, that if you'd ever been in the position of serving as a caretaker to someone who is dying, it places such an immense burden on you. You break every day. And when they finally pass on, there's that brief moment of relief that they aren't in pain anymore, and that you can start to pick up the pieces that then immediately fills you with so much guilt. That's the subtext for me in Ilya's fight with Alexei, where they are both aware of the relief they feel now that Grigory Rozanov is dead. They have been watching this proud man, their father, slowly lose his mind over the years, but there is the guilt at feeling that relief that he's gone. And Ilya is burdened further with the guilt that those last moments where he got to catch his breath and breathe and fall deeper in love with Shane, his brother was bearing all that burden alone. It is why he tells Shane that Alexei is scared, and when he's feeling all that emotion, it turns him mean, which in turn makes Ilya meaner as a response to that. They are both stuck in this endless cycle that has its root at their father's slow decline. Not like I am in any way defending Alexei, mind you. Ilya punching his ass out for calling precious baby girl Svetlana a whore, I cheered so fucking loud. But yes, Ilya sent money. But what amount of money can adequately cover what it takes to be the caretaker of their father in his dying moments? I find it very telling that when Ilya talks about it to Shane, it tells him that it kills me that he took care of my father and I didn't. I wasn't here. He didn't say our father, he said my father, because in that moment, Ilya's belief that Alexei, through his care of their father in his final days, had done his duty as their father's son, whilst he has failed in his own duty in doing the same. And Ilya takes that as a personal fault. And then we go even further inwards, and then there is the guilt he feels towards his brother. On one hand, he's very much aware that the only reason why he was able to play the sport he loves with the man he loves is because of his brother and the money he had been sending home for the family's upkeep. But at the same time, he is very angry that everything he's had to give his family isn't enough, that Alexei would always seek to take more and more and more from him, not seeing him as family, but as a bank account that he can withdraw money from however he pleases. His words to Shane about his brother having hated him and most likely being unable to forgive him for not being there and yet constantly seeking him out to get more money from him hit me so hard. I do not think it is a coincidence that the show has always made it obvious that every interaction Alexei has had with Ilya on screen, I've always had him at some point in their conversation calling his brother a slur. We are meant to deduce that Alexei is very much aware of Ilya's sexuality, even if their father was in the dark. Alexei has always known, and he always hated Ilya for that. It is why Ilya tells Shane that his brother would never forgive him for existing. And yet, the fact that even with that hatred, Alexei still considers Ilya his mobile ATM, available for him to get money whenever he wants, even though he loathes him, is an experience that a lot of us square folk can relate to, where there are family who hate you for who you are, and yet they have no shame or qualms in collecting your money and throwing slurs in your face in equal measure. And then you find yourself, like Ilya, handing over the money you've worked hard to earn because they are family. And you might not be able to be who they want you to be, but at least they can't say no to your money, right? And the guilt that comes with that sits on you. Because why the hell am I giving my money to this homophobic piece of shit is because they're family. And then we have the confession where Ilya admits the guilt he feels at the knowledge that Svetlana does love him and he does love her, just not in the same way he loves Shane. Shane is all he wants. With Shane is where he wants to be. Shane is his safety, his anchor, his home, and that terrifies him. And the final bit of that confession always hits me in the solar plexus because Ilya confirms in that confession that he knows what choosing Svetlana would mean. The utmost guilt that he's found himself burdened with would be eased with her. He wouldn't need to give up his home, his family, his motherland. His father might be dead, but he knows his father's spirit would approve of the choice. And Alexei would probably stop calling him slurs in every other sentence. But if he chooses Svetlana, then that guilt turns inward at himself because he would be lying to himself. Because as much as Svetlana might be the easier choice, the safer choice, Shane is the one he wants, the only one he wants, the one he chooses. And his love for him is so all encompassing and he doesn't know what to do about it. And that just broke me utterly. So, to the people that have been insisting that Shane and Ilya's story isn't in any way romantic, here is hoping that episode 5 showed you just how wrong you were about that. And to the ones who find it very easy to brush off Ilya's own journey with regards coming to terms and fully admitting his own sexuality and living that truth because it does not, have to go on this full on discovery the way that Shane does because of the fact that he's Ilya Rozanov and his bravado and his braggart tendencies mean that we tend to forget that just as Shane is having his own identity crisis and then having to make an active choice that this is the truth he's going to live by, Ilya Rozanov has to do the same. And that confession that he makes is him taking that step before us as the audience. But of course, these are just my thoughts. I would, as always, love to hear yours, whether or not you agree with me. Please share them in the comments. Like this video, however, if you've watched this far and haven't done so yet and have enjoyed anything I have had to say. Share it so others can find my channel as well. Or you can check out my gaming or ASMR channels if they sound like something you might possibly potentially be interested in. I have them both linked in the description box. I will see you next Friday. Right? Until then, I would say that Merry Christmas to those who celebrate, Happy Solstice to those who practice, Happy Holidays to those who are looking forward to the holidays. Until next Friday, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.